What's going on? I'm finally back. I've been gone for a long time. If you haven't seen my videos in the past, I'm Corey, cvsahara, and this is my 1999 TJ. This is a vehicle that I've had on the channel ever since I started my channel a couple years ago. And when I first got this vehicle, although I didn't show it on the channel, it was just a fairly stock Jeep, 32-inch tires, 2-inch lift, and that was it. Just a stock Sahara. Probably one of the first walk-around videos I did on this Jeep was a couple years ago when I first put on the flat fenders. At that point, I think I was transitioning to some 33-ish inch, 17-inch tires with JK rims. Realistically, it still only had a couple inches left, and there wasn't much done to the Jeep at all. I think I then did a real quick walk around when I put the 35s on. Since then, which that was probably a couple years ago, since then, the Jeep has done a dramatic transformation. Maybe not physically because it's still on 35-inch tires, but it is not anywhere near the same Jeep that I had originally several years ago on 32-inch tires. And so this video is to update it and kind of look at all the stuff I've done over the past year, which realistically it's been a year because that's when I got my 8.8 was about a year ago. Yeah, last Christmas. So that's when I really started to try to convert this over into something more than what it was. So we're going to look at that. I'm going to take you on a walk around the Jeep, and then we're going to go for a little test drive, and then we'll talk about where the Jeep goes from here, because anyone who's ever had a Jeep or any type of vehicle like this understands that the journey's never over and that we will always be trying to make things better and sometimes making them worse in the process. But either way, the idea is to keep modifying this Jeep until I move on to something else. Maybe one day I'll get a JK or a JL or something, but right now I'll stick with my TJs. So let's take a look at everything I've done to this Jeep. So first thing you'll notice is I did have Cooper all-terrains on here. I went to the mud terrains, the STT Pros, same size, 35-12-50, same rims, 15-inch Steelies. I haven't tried these off-road yet, but so far on road I love them. They're working great. Of course, the Jeep's always had a winch with synthetic rope. Ooh, I put new stickers on there. There's not much Sahara left. I took all the body cladding off, and also took the Sahara interior out, but it is still a Sahara through and through. So let's get under it and look at the 8.8 and some of the things I did underneath it. So I'm not crawling under here, but hopefully you can see that I built an 8.8. I welded on a Barnes 4x4 bracket kit, measured all that out myself, welded it all on myself. Obviously put in a slip yoke eliminator, including a new drive shaft that I got made from a drive shaft shop here in town out of a Cherokee front drive shaft. I put on Bilstein 5100 shocks on all four corners, and I bought these control arms, adjustable control arms, top and bottom, from Core 4x4. To accommodate the extra lift that I wanted, I took my stock 2.5-inch lift springs and I just put some 1 3/4-inch pucks under the rear and 2-inch pucks under the front. We'll look at that here in a second. Doing all this allowed me to remove my transfer case drop, which was a huge bonus. The front was quite a bit different. I knew I wanted to go long arms on the front, so I built these long arms myself, just with steel and parts from Barnes 4x4. I'm using Heim joints, 1 1/4-inch Heim joints back here. I'm using trail gear trail joints at the front with Bilsteins again, and I had to get some extended brake lines. The front also has 488 gears in it to match the rear. That's a new axle that I had had in my garage for a long time. Here you can see the pucks I put on the springs. I also had to get an adjustable front track bar. That is a Rubicon Express. And I had these extended sway bar links already. You can see the sway bar has a good angle. The rear sway bar does not. I don't know if you can see that or not, but the rear sway bar has a bad angle because the end links aren't long enough. I do have new end links for that. The Bilsteins ride great. All the brakes work fine. I do have the drilled and slotted rotors and these ceramic pads on the front. I now have discs on the rear. You can see I need to adjust my steering stops as the tire at full lock does contact the control arm. I do have a homemade swing out tire carrier and a drop down tailgate for this Jeep that I also built. There's a few adjustments and modifications I need to do to it. I made it very quickly and never did go back and paint it, and some few things we'll talk about in a second. Last thing is I did put a adjustable rear track bar on as well to help center the rear axle underneath the Jeep. Now, to try and keep this video as short as possible, let's go through the quick few things that I still have left to do and where I see the Jeep going from here. I've got the 488 gears now. They work flawless. Actually, let's go on a little ride along and let me show you kind of what the gears and the rear axle, how that works. And the new suspension. So now the big question, how does it drive now that I've done all this stuff to it? Well, in short terms, fantastic. It's always dodgy when you're building your own suspension components, and you never know how a vehicle's going to react when you change gearing and do a bunch of weird stuff to it. It's always a fear that you're going to make it worse than it was. Might be better at some things, but a lot worse at others. So far, and I still have to change the brake-in oil from the rear end. I've still got a few things to do. But so far, it has been just great. I mean, feels more stable than it ever did. It rides much smoother. And the takeoff and acceleration with those 488s, although it makes the gearing first and second really short, it's just head and shoulders. It's like adding 50 horsepower to the vehicle. I hold fourth gear a whole lot longer. And the reason it's longer is because I'm able to get into fourth gear a lot earlier. It holds fifth gear even when I'm not on the highway, which is amazing. Now on the highway, I have taken one highway trip with it, and on the highway at 70 miles an hour, it's a little hairy. It's not as stable as it was at 70, 75 miles an hour. Number one, it's turning a pretty high number of RPMs at that point, and that makes it kind of scary for a 186,000 mile motor. But at the 60, 65 miles an hour, perfect. Now I haven't taken it off-road yet, so I can't say how it's going to react there, but I do know just from jacking up the corners, putting the tires on, things like that, that it has a lot more travel. But just cruising around back roads like I'm doing now is it's just a different Jeep. I just started off that hill in second gear. I'm not sure I've got the caster set right. The steering has a little bit of a wonder to it that it didn't have before. The steering actually feels more firm than it did, but when I'm giving it input, when I'm not giving it input, it feels like it's got a little more wondering. It might just have a wore out steering box after 180,000 miles. I'm fixing to hit a bump at about 45 miles an hour while turning, and no death wobble. I haven't had any death wobble yet. Like I said, I've been on the interstate going 70, 75 miles an hour. No death wobble. So I'm on a really steep hill right now going up to a railroad track. I'm in third gear, just cruising along at 15 miles an hour. I couldn't have done that before, that's for sure. About to pull out on a 4-lane, and I have no fear that I'll be able to get out in front of whatever vehicle I'm trying to get out in front of. I've got to get gas. I gotta get gas immediately. So to sum up how this thing drives great, better than it did. Despite all the work I did to it, I didn't screw it up that bad. Fourth gear is the new third, fifth gear is the new fourth, and you don't really have a fifth gear because when you get up to, like I said, 75 miles an hour, you are pretty well screaming some RPMs for a 180,000 mile motor. Would I do it again? Absolutely. I still hold to my opinion that for daily driving, 410s are about right for 35. For daily driving, you still got use of fifth gear. I have noticed a drop in gas mileage since going to this setup. I still say with 33s that 410s or 373s are the best for daily driving, not for off-roading. But these 488s, considering this isn't my daily driver, they're going to be the cat's meow. People who do the 8.8 swap also complain about not being able to get the brakes right. I haven't had any of those issues. The brakes work fantastic. It stops so much better than with the drums. These have the discs. I didn't do anything special. I didn't change the proportioning valve. I didn't do anything special. I ran my own junky lines for the brakes. and they work great. Maybe I'm just lucky, but I think I don't try to overthink things, and I try to make it as simple as possible, and it seemed to work. All right, so as you can see, the Jeep runs and drives better than it ever has, but let's talk about where I go from here with this Jeep. It's still just a basic mall crawler style Jeep. It's nothing fantastic. A few things I got to do. Rear sway bar links, I've already got them. Got to fix that to get that sway bar angle correct. I'm going to take off the tire carrier and sand it and repaint it. I'm also going to mount my 35-inch spare that I have. I'll probably go ahead and weld on a high lift jack, which I do have, mount maybe a gas can, water can, I'm not sure. But I don't want too much weight back there, and I don't want it to get too bulky. I'm going to be taking these off, sanding them down, and repainting them with actual automotive paint, so they'll look all nice. I'll probably, maybe not automotive paint, but definitely some satin paint as opposed to the plastic dip I put on them. It's starting to rub off underneath. It has none left where I've scraped over some stuff. I've got to take the rear bumper off and repaint it as well while I'm doing that. I'm going to put a new exhaust on it. It doesn't have a cat anymore. It hasn't had a cat since I've owned it, but it does have just a stock exhaust. I want to remove that and put a Dynomax, I think, so I'm going back with, or a MagnaFlow, one or the other. One must do, I've got to do, is I've got to replace the rear gas tank skid, because that rear gas tank skid is starting to completely rot. It's this Jeep was originally from up north, so it had a little bit of rust on it. I found that the gas tank skid is in much worse shape. So one day I'm going to be bouncing down a rock or something, and that gas tank's just going to end up on the trail. Probably the first thing I've got to do is figure that out. Could just go back with a stock one, or I could figure out a way to make a new one, one that's a little bit stronger. I'd like to gain some clearance, but everything on this Jeep is still done on a budget. I've done everything myself, to setting up the gears, to welding everything on it, and so everything's on a budget as cheap as possible. I've got to get some traction aids. The rear has a limited slip in it, which I'm fine with. But I would like to get a lunchbox locker for the front. This isn't a daily driver, so I understand that it will impact the way it drives, and I'm willing to deal with that. I would like to potentially get a front stubby bumper with a hoop, not a stinger, but a hoop for the winch. And one of the final things that I really want to do, now that I've got the hardtop, one of the last things I want to do is trade in my half doors for some full doors. Don't care what color, because I'll paint them, but I've got to find some full doors, and they're hard to find at a reasonable price. People are wanting thousands of dollars for a set of full doors. It's crazy to me. But I can keep my soft doors, which I have had on for a year now straight. I can keep those for summertime, or if I want a half door experience, but I'd like to have the full doors to match the hardtop. I'm pretty happy with the interior, the seats. I do need to take the roll cage out completely in one unit, resand it, and repaint all of it. All right, I hope you've liked the Jeep. I will continue to build it. Long-term plans. This is extremely long-term plans. Once everything's said and done, I go ahead and long arm the rear. I know there'll be some questions about why short arms in the rear and long arm. It was all about affordability, items I already had on hand from some old rock crawler projects, and that was really it. I mean, I had the parts already to make the front, and I just didn't have the parts to make the rear. And the rear long arm is a lot more involved, because there's some different things you have to do to make that work properly with some frame mounts and things. So I wasn't prepared to do that yet. But long term, long arm rear, either relocate, probably get a smaller gas tank or a different gas tank, a high clearance gas tank, so that I can stretch the wheelbase a few inches back. I would like to do a flat skid. That might be the next performance related thing I do, other than put a front traction aid in. And then I'd like to go ahead and try to find maybe a waggy front end, Dana 44. That way I don't have to, well, I can go up to 37-inch tires and not have to worry about it. For right now, 35-inch tires in my opinion, because this does have chromoly axle shafts in the front. Chromoly axle shafts in the front with the 8.8 in the rear. I can go 35s all day and not really worry about it. 37s, even at that point, you're still talking about Dana 30 stubs and U-joints, and that's just not a good scenario. It's a work in progress, guys, but thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. If you have any suggestions, I may not follow them, but I'll listen to them. I like to do things, just remember, if you give me a suggestion, I like to do things cheap. I like to do things that I can do myself, and that's very limiting. I like to do things that make sense within the build, which means this still gets driven on the street frequently, and it has to be able to travel from where I'm at in Georgia all the way down to Florida and back without being trailered. Any suggestions you have that meet that criteria, I'm all ears. But guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully I have some more videos coming soon about some other things with the Jeep. I definitely have some Corvette videos coming very soon, because I've done some things to it that I would like to go ahead and put the videos out. But guys, thanks for watching and have a great day.